I am going to make it quick and let our experts go ahead and dive right in and get started so that there is time for everyone to ask questions at the end. So Sean, if you want to go ahead and get us started.
Sure. Hi, my name is Sean Burns. I'm the Director of Safety and Security here at Kent ISD in Grand Rapids. With me is Scott Beckman from Rockford Public Schools, Chad Songer from Kentwood Public Schools, and Larry Johnson from Grand Rapids Public Schools. The four of us work fairly closely together throughout the year and in the summers, developing programs for our not only our districts, but for other districts in Kent County. So put together a real quick slide presentation on some stuff that's being that was signed by the governor, new safety and security laws that went into effect this year that we thought board members might want to take notice of. And with that, if we could get the first slide, we can talk about that one. So the first one I'd like to talk about is the safe storage laws. And the reason I want to talk about this is because you'll notice there it says no later than 1 July 2025, Department of Health and Human Services will provide an informational notice on safe storage of firearms, and those are the requirements for it. Reason I brought this to everyone's attention is that hasn't been pushed out yet. If you look at the next slide, it'll tell you that 1 October 2025, basically school boards, district school boards are responsible for pushing that notice out to their parents by 1 October. And if you don't have it from Department of Health and Human Services, we obviously can't push it out. So I'll let you know it's there. I've talked to some of my counterparts at the ISD level, and they have been assured that we'll probably get this document here within a week or two, but still probably gonna have a hard time meeting the 1 October deadline. You got Larry, Chad, or Scott, you guys got anything?
No, I was just going to jokingly say they'll probably push it out on the 30th of September, but yeah, I have not heard anything on that front either.
No.
Yeah, and I got this from Troy Woodwick down in Allegan County, and talked to John Gale over in Muskegon and Bob Teese, and nobody over here in West Michigan's heard anything. So, but I just want to let our new board members know that this is going to be coming, and it's something that probably once you get it, you'll have to get it out to your families. Does anybody have any questions on that?
There was a question in the chat that asks, can we summarize essentially what the safe gun law says as it relates to communicating to our families? And I think that's basically what it says. So the districts will provide information to families, put it on your website about safe gun laws, and giving some instructions, directions that is being provided by Human Health and Services and other organizations that allows for parents to receive information on how to safely store weapons in their homes to reduce the possibility of them coming to school with a scholar.
Yeah, I think what's going to happen is once they push it out, it's going to be in a format you basically will be able to cut and paste and put onto onto your own letterhead. So because it had to be in English, Arabic, and Spanish too. So whether or not you got folks that can interpret and produce that document, my guess is it'll come that way right from the DHHS.
And Sean, can quickly one of you just explain what that law is? Like, what is safe storage?
Yeah, basically, it's just if you have weapons in your home, you have to keep unattended weapons locked or with some type of safety lock, or locked in a safe space in areas where it's reasonably known that a minor is present. So weapons at home need to be locked up.
And I think you make a great point, Chad, when you use the term reasonable. So it's not just when they're there, it's when they may be there, or you assume they may be there. So you just got to make sure that they're locked up.
if you do, if your parents and guardians do not have locks for their firearms, they can get them at no cost through Michigan State Police, and most local police agencies will have them on hand. All they gotta do is go in and request them.
What I've also learned, the team, is that if they have a some type of public safety department or even a local police department, Michigan State Police will send some of those locks to their organization for disbursement at different school events.
Thank you guys for that.
Okay, so this next slide is actually, Larry, you've got better history on this, and since you've been appointed to the board, can you cover this?
Yeah, so the governor's office had created a school safety task force, then later converted that to a commission on school safety. There was also a mental health commission that was running as well. Last year, there was a decision made to combine the two committees. So they repealed both of the two sitting committees to create one committee that combines school safety and mental health. 17 individuals, a merger of the two committees, were being appointed to that committee. The committee is still waiting for full appointments to happen. Neither one of the committees, the school safety committee or the mental health, has met in a while as they kind of uplift this new mental health school safety commission. Once that is uplifted and meeting again, then the opportunity to combine those two expertise together to begin to look at some suggestions and recommendations on how to move forward with rolling out some recommendations to schools. Under the School Safety Commission, they had created 27 recommendations that what they thought schools should be doing. I don't know what came up under the mental health, but they did see some overlapping in the two groups, and governor's office decided to merge those. So look, in the next 30 to 45 days, we think that this commission will be completely filled and reappointments occur, and then we can get back on a meeting schedule.
Okay, were there any questions on the commission? Trying to read the chats, but I'm not sure I'm tracking everything.
I'll keep you guys updated on chat. No worries. There aren't any
Okay.
questions yet. But just so in case anyone is curious, like Amy was, you will get the slides after the webinar. So you will be able to get copies of these.
All right, the next one we wanted to brief you all on was the requirement for threat assessment teams. Chad or Scott, one of you guys want to cover that?
Yeah, basically this is our BTAM team, our behavioral threat assessment teams. Every district has to have a team, and typically we've had them for years and years. They've just changed the names a few times. But this group now, basically what happens is we have a threat of any sort, whether it's a threat that happens in school, whether it's a threat that happens after school, or out in the community, social media threats, basically any kind of threat that we become aware of that involves our students that could be a threat to our students or staff or community. Those are the people that investigate that. There's an initial group that will investigate it, and then each district will have, at Kentwood Public Schools, each building has their own small team, and then in the district we have another team made up of administrators, myself, our school resource officers, and some mental health professionals. But basically it is not a disciplinary type group. Basically it's trying to figure out what's going on with a student and figuring out what we can do to help support them or to get them some additional resources. But with that, we have resources like Sean's Burns team over at the ISD. Kyle Raymond works there. So if we have a student at Kentwood Public Schools so we're getting word that they're making social media threats, I will reach out to Kyle. Kyle has access to be able to search and the expertise to search and see if there's other information out there, there's other leakage out there from that student. So we have some really great resources that we utilize when we have those types of threats. But these are the team members that would investigate those threats and then designate some resources for a student once, if we find out there are some significant things going on.
We do have a question. It has some acronyms in it that I am not familiar with, but are they requiring BTAM or are CSTAG or NTAC evals okay?
So the behavioral threat assessment management is based on the ANTEC model from the U.S. Secret Service. Is the state of Michigan requiring it? No, but you will have to have a threat assessment team that's going to, at a minimum, have your a school administrator on it, a mental health professional, and a law enforcement official from the agency that covers where your school is at. So that could be there. I know we've got some of the districts in Kent County have a similar model to the BTEMS. The BTEMS is what the state of the Office of School Safety is pushing out and training everyone on. But they're as long as you have a threat assessment process, that's what that's what they're looking at. And that threat assessment process, the folks that make up that team at a minimum must have those 3 individuals.
And I think that the CSTAG, NTAC, and BTAM models all kind of interconnect. The original model that came out was the NTAC model, Six Sigma, that came out years ago from the Secret Service. If you look at many of the components of the NTAC model, it clearly aligns with the BTAM as well, putting focus now on more the mental health aspects of a child or scholar who may be prone to carry out a threat. One of the highlights, I think, of BTAM that I didn't see in NTAC, which I was heavily involved in NTAC from the start, that it offers an assessment process that helps to identify early on with the smaller teams in the building so that you can carry out some more services and wraparound services, as well as a reentry program for that scholar if you have to go through an assessment on them. And so having those teams not only in the building, but having a district-wide team will hope to identify some challenges with the scholars early on if a threat is made.
Yeah, Larry's absolutely right. The whole theory to it is getting the kids off the pathway of targeted violence and getting them those wraparound services that Larry talked about, mental health, whatever it is that those children or those scholars require. And sometimes it's not just the student, it's also their families also. But it's not focused so much on kicking them out of school and losing contact with the student. It's more geared towards wraparound services that get them off the pathway of targeted violence.
And the goal was to try to reduce out of school time. In the past, the NTAC model, many times scholars were removed from they were removed from the educational environment until the school law enforcement could determine what that pathway was. But now the BTAM model offers some supports to try to keep the young person connected, but at the same time put them in a situation where they're not a harm to themselves or others, and to assure that we can move through that process quickly to get the services to the student.
And another question from the chat is, if the threat assessment team determines there is an actual threat, is there a requirement that the district share any information about that?
I think that's going to depend upon what the board's policies are for that district. I know our board policies and our procedures here are, we share as much as we can with staff, students, and parents, just so folks are aware of what's going on and they don't read about it or hear about it on social media.
Does the mental health professional have to be a certified clinician?
Mm-hmm.
Larry, you got that?
Yeah, I think it does require that the mental health person that's involved be a clinician or one of your psychologists, social workers, one of those individuals that must be on that team.
Does anybody else have any questions on threat assessment teams before we have the gentleman move along? We do want to thank you, Brad, promo ALC. There is a presentation on threat assessment teams and student safety during the Michigan's Council on School Attorneys mini conference during ALC. So if anybody has any additional questions on that, feel free to shoot us an email here at MASB and we can direct you guys on that as well. But does anybody else have questions for these guys on this slide? And we'll keep on moving. Okay, awesome.
Scotty, you want to grab this one, please?
Sure. So, excuse me, also signed into law is the push to now have districts with common language. So the standard terminology that they're kind of set the bar at is with the I Love You Guys Foundation. And that standard terminology is going to be what law enforcement is going to be training on, especially well in the Kent area. Our law enforcement teams have also started that training to understand the terminology. The schools are going to be required to have that training and terminology implemented by October 1st of 2026. I can give you the example that this year, Rockford, we put our entire district staff through the I Love You Guys standard response protocol training back on August 20th. So that training is started and now pushing it through the schools to our staff, who will then provide the training to our students. Excuse me. So that everyone understands what the terms mean. Everyone understands what they're supposed to do if something like that occurs. And also bringing in our parents with a letter that goes out prior to that training day that's going to let them know that this is what your student's going to be talking about in class today. Please don't hesitate, or please have a conversation when they come home, because the students will have some of that information also. And the terms they're using, you know, everyone has all kinds of codes that they use. And some of these codes are, you know, code red, code yellow, code 1, you know, Barney's left the building, things like that. So what they're trying to do is get to that common talk. So if let's say Kentwood is visiting Rockford, or one of the Grand Rapids schools is visiting Rockford, and they're in the building and an alert goes out for a hold or a shelter or a lockdown, that terminology is common across the districts. So no matter what school building you're in, you understand what is supposed to occur when that alert comes out. So over the next year, and you know, by October 1st of 26, schools will be required to implement that by the 26-27 school year.
And to talk more about that common language, you know, for our dispatchers working dispatch downtown who are dealing with all of the districts in Kent County, and say you're a law enforcement sheriff's deputy that's working in Cedar Springs, and sometimes you come down and work Kentwood, the terminology used to be very different in Cedar Springs than it was in Kentwood. And so we had a lot of problems with situations where we should have been put in a secure mode, where our students and staff were unnecessarily traumatized because they were put into a lockdown. And so what this I Love You Guys format creates, it just creates common language that everyone's on the same page. There's no misconceptions or misunderstandings on what our response is. And that's whether you're in Byron Center, whether you're in Rockford, whether you're in Sparta, we're all in the same boat.
Larissa, can you go, or Chrissy, can you go to the next slide? Because it's actually got some of the stuff on there too. I'm sorry, one more, the white one. There we go. And I kind of want to tag along with what Chad and Scott were saying. Between the four of us, Larry, myself, Chad, and Scott, we got with the Kent County Sheriff's Office, and the sheriff agreed to put base units, 800 megahertz base units in each one of our schools. So that if there is a crisis in our school, there's a large button on it, you can hit it and you're talking immediately with dispatch. And what that, to tag along with what Chad's saying, those officers and those deputies that are reporting to the crisis, even the emergency medical technicians or the firefighters that are responding, they all know what a secure is. They all know what a hold is. They all know what a lockdown is versus trying to figure out what a code red or code yellow or Mr. Mert is. So everybody's working off the same sheet of music. Matter of fact, I've had conversations with, we've got a couple universities in Grand Rapids and a community college, and talked to our counterparts at those institutions, and they're adopting it. Because what's happening now is that, as the kids come out of the Kent County school districts, they don't have to learn a new system once they get to higher education. These systems, the terminology is already in place. So this is going to be one of the first things that Larry's commission, I think, will be voting on as soon as they get over there. It's a really good system. It's from the I Love You Guys Foundation. You can go right on the website and pull down as much information as you want on it. There's no charge to it. They don't charge districts for it. Everything's free, but yet it's got a lot of empirical evidence that it works. And you can see by some of the states there that have adopted it, like Virginia and Colorado and New York, Texas, are pretty well known for their school safety programs. So I think it's going to be a real good first step for the commission and for the state.
Yeah, and I would encourage people, Sean, to kind of go to that the state of Michigan site, the Michigan State Police and Office of School Safety website. All of this is on there. Templates are on there for emergency operations plans. The standard response protocol and information is on there. There's a lot of information that's on that MSP OSS website that you'd be able to access. And I did see a question pop up on the cost of the 800 megahertz. Sean, if you want to go further on that, that was a grant, correct?
Yep.
Yeah, I think what the sheriff used was some of the COVID money that came out, and used that to purchase these radios for each one of our K through 12 schools, not only the public schools but also the private and charter schools.
But if I can go back to just the standard response protocol, just for just one brief moment, the whole idea was to reduce some of the trauma that was some of our scholars were experiencing on the way that lockdowns were being used in some districts. They're just being overused. So standard response protocols help to align and will help to align all of that, help to reduce some trauma-informed, age-appropriate when they conduct drills, and it will help to reduce some of the tension as it relates to schools going in lockdowns for medical reason, for example. And if announcing that it's a medical hold in itself will help to reduce some of the tension that some of our scholars were experiencing with the overuse of quote unquote code red. And so that will help with that across the board with our scholars.
And I see the question that that says, so am I to understand all Michigan schools should be switching to I love you language? That's going to be probably one of the first things the Office of School Safety has to forward this stuff to the commission, and the commission has to vote on that. So I would imagine it's going to be one of the first orders of business. That has not been, the I Love You Guys Foundation has not been selected, but I think it'd be a great selection if they would, just because of all the things that are on that white slide there.
It is probably going to come out and under the revised recommendations from the combined commission. This is probably going to be one of the first recommendations that come out, that all schools move toward a standard response protocol. And remember, it is a recommendation only, because it's not going to come with any funding behind it. And so all the commission can do is make some recommendations.
Any other questions on standard response protocols or terminology or anything like that from anyone? Go ahead and shoot it in the chat and we'll see if we can get our experts to get those answered for us.
And that's pretty much it for our slideshow, Chris. So if folks got questions or, we,
Okay, great. Yeah,
Ready
let's
to-
open it up. Any questions on anything school safety related that we think our gentlemen here, our panel can get answered for you?
You have about 150 years of experience between the four of us here, between law enforcement, school safety, and security. Here's your chance to let us have it.
Yeah,
Let's see if we can help you.
yeah, but I only got about 5 years, Larry.
Yeah, right.
Unless you guys are old.
I hit 50 this week, so yeah, you're outing me a little bit.
I ain't gonna tell you who's the two oldest members of this board.
You know, something we might want to throw out there, guys, we talked about it before, is that, you know, there are districts do need to submit to the MDE their emergency operations plans that are in place that are aligned with what the state has required, that has to go before the board as a review, remembering that those documents are not FOIA-able by any citizens, that they, you know, that they are exempt from that. But every, by January, I believe, of every even year, as though each school district needs to submit to the MDE that they are in compliance with the emergency operations requirements, that they are in compliance, that they, you know, that their board did, excuse me, review the plan or see the plan, and that that is that confirmation that you're able to use with the MDE.
Okay, we have some questions coming in. I'll start at the top. Are there some schools that still use yellow, red, and black cards?
Part of the I Love You Guys Foundation format, there are red and green cards that are used for evacuation purposes. So say I've got a classroom of my 15 kids and I go out, we have a fire drill and I have to go out and locate to a different spot and I only have 12 kids. I'm going to use that red card to let administration know and our accountability team know that, hey, I've got something going on. I need you to talk to me. And I'm going to say, hey, I'm missing 3 kids. Or say I picked up a couple kids on my way. I'm going to hold that red card up and say, hey, I've got a couple extra kids. That way they just know that at some point they need to come and talk to me about what's going on. Flip that. If I've got all my kids, everybody's accounted for, I'm going to hold my green card up, and that lets those accountability teams know that those people are good. We don't have to deal with them. They're all set.
I know that some folks used to use them, they slide them underneath the doors during lockdowns, let them know that practice is kind of gone, is no longer best practice.
I think there's a question in the chat about the efficiency of 911 versus the 800 mega radios. The advantage of the 800 megahertz radio is it is going right straight to dispatch. So that front desk person who engages that radio is going right to the dispatcher, but not only going to the dispatcher, that information is being broadcast countywide across our county. So if Kentwood's radios goes off, we're hearing it in Grand Rapids, and we're getting a response very much quicker than the cell phones, much quicker than the telephone. But as long as you can engage that radio, you're going to get some help. And as I understand it, for about 5 to 6 seconds after you release that radio, there is still some on open mic that is being heard on the other end. So it's much more efficient when it is utilized. And it's only utilized for life-threatening emergencies. It cannot be used for common police engagement or a need for police. It is for life-threatening emergencies.
Scott, can you clarify emergency operations plans being subject or not subject to FOIA? Is that something you can
Yes.
talk about?
Yeah, the law indicates that emergency operations plans are would be critical, and they are not subject to FOIA. So a parent couldn't say, I want to come in and I'm going to FOIA your emergency operations plan for Rockford High School. It is exempt. So they would not get that, of course, due to the nature of the sensitivity of the information that could be contained on there.
Yeah, discussions on your emergency operation plan to your board should be done in closed session. That's
was
not
just gonna
information
say.
that you want to put out across the
Yep,
board.
so related to that question, how often do your boards, or would you recommend your boards review your plans in those closed sessions?
What I did is last night I presented at the board, and the presentation was pretty generic in nature. And the school board president and superintendent had already reviewed the document, along with our fire department chiefs, the law enforcement with jurisdiction over the schools, and the Kent County Emergency Management Office. So there's a lot of review that was done, and the presentation, pretty much stated that the review was complete. We're in compliance with the state law. The people that are required to sign off on that document have signed off on the document, and so we're compliant with the state. Then if they had any questions, the questions are usually general in nature. They weren't specific to a plan. So that's where, if there is further discussion, where Larry talked about, is you would go into closed session because of the sensitivity of the document.
Is this something you would recommend boards bring up yearly, twice a year, either in open session or in closed session?
Well, your EOP's got to be updated every 2 years at a minimum.
Right.
I think the four of us, it's pretty safe to say we brief our boards every year. We review our EOPs and then brief our boards on it every year.
I'm on a quarterly schedule where I'm meeting in front of my board for updates quarterly. It's a lot, but in terms of going into closed sessions, we're doing that about once a year to go into closed sessions to go and ask questions, in-depth questions about the EOP. But just in terms of school safety updates, we're trying to update, as we're updating right now. I try to update them quarterly if there's some changes that's going on in the law that they need to know about.
And Brad is adding some excellent context in the chat as well, which will be shared after the webinar, so you can see kind of the legal side of it coming from Brad. Thank you for that, Brad. I'll rapid fire a few more questions at you guys. Again, on the 800 megahertz radio, is that hardwired or portable?
It's both, actually. The 800s that are in the main offices are base units, but some schools have portable units that they use also.
Awesome.
But the ones that are wired to the dispatch are I guess hardwired.
Okay, great. Would any of you want to speak briefly on immigration enforcement on or outside of school property, concerned about effects on student and staff in those situations?
I would tell you to have a strong policy, a board policy around it. And if you have a strong visitation policy and who can come into your school and when, I think you're halfway there. For here in Grand Rapids, for the most part, we have not seen any immigration enforcement around or in our schools, none in our schools. But our visitor control procedures helps to dictate who can come in. The immigrations officer would be a visitor to our school, and we would not let that individual have any contact with any of our students at all. We would hold that individual in the office and get the information that they were seeking. If they came with a warrant, we would address that differently. If they had a civil warrant for one of our scholars or one of our staff members, but having a strong policy around visitor management is your best protection, not only around immigrations enforcement, but any visitor that comes to your facility.
Yeah, and I just second what Larry's got. your staff and your administrators should be well versed on what to do if a federal agent or for that matter, any law enforcement officer
Right.
shows up at their school.
Do you recommend an SRO or security officer in each building as a minimum precaution?
That's our work. No, no, no. Being I think Chad and I being the ones that's been in this work the longest. I'm a huge advocate for having an SRO, in-house security, or a combination of both, whatever your district can afford. But there has to be some person, I think, whose focus is in this day and age, whose focus is on school safety and security, who can continue to be a liaison with your local law enforcement. It's unfortunately it is a every dollar into school safety and security is a dollar out of the classroom. We recognize that. But unfortunately, it is a necessary thing that districts should be considering, is having some level of school safety and security. I would love to have a person in every building. We can't afford to do that. We have a pretty robust program here where we provide supports to every building. So if you're a district that can do that, I highly encourage it because they're just not doing school safety and security work. They're offering a lot of other services to scholars and building relationships with families. And I think it just goes a long way to have the right person there, be it a school resource officer or a dedicated person assigned to your district, hired by your district for the purpose of over your school safety and security.
I was going to say the same thing. That relationship piece, I think, is the biggest part. Of all the money I spend, whether it's cameras, whether it's, card access, the money I spend on people and the relationships that they build with students, for me, that is the number one thing that is going to cause us to not have some type of a incident in our school. It's those relationships where our students feel comfortable coming to a staff member. And it doesn't always necessarily, as much as I advocate for safety staff, it could be trainings that your rest of your staff have, whether it's capturing kids' hearts, whatever it is that helps build relationships with our students, where they're comfortable coming to, and they have, that trusted adult in their school. It's very important for our kids.
Yeah, here in Kent County, we've used the phrase, and I know I've used it and said it for many years. It's the hardware, not the hardware, that will make the huge difference in your connections with families and scholars in your buildings. So hardware is great if you can afford it, great. But it's the hardware, the person who's going to connect with your scholars, connect with your families, that's going to make the biggest difference in changing the culture around school safety and security.
Yeah, and I just want to reiterate what both Chad and Larry said. First thing I tell my security officers are, most of those folks are retired law enforcement. I tell them, hey, you're not here to hook people up, you're here to help people out. And like Chad said, the goal of our security officers is to be that one trusted adult figure that kids are comfortable coming to. School resource officers, I'm a big advocate of. And for a lot of reasons, but for the biggest reasons is that it gives our kids the opportunity to interact with law enforcement outside of interacting with them on the street, or if they're on a call to the house, whatever. They get to see them as human beings versus in a reactive environment. So I'm a big advocate of school security officers and a huge advocate of school resource officers.
Quickly, I know we're coming up on 1 o'clock. We are at 1 o'clock, and I don't want to take up too much more of anyone's time today. So quickly, could you talk about, we have a question from Amy that says, we do not have a run, hide, fight policy. Could you comment on not calling 911 or using radios and only using cell phones to directly contact SROs or admins?
The problem you're going to have in a really tragic situation, your phones are going to be taken up. Phone line, you're going to have every kid in a building trying to use their phone to call someone. So not having some alternate way of getting that information out would be a detriment, because phone lines for all intents and purposes may be shut down. You may have, at East Kentwood High School, we have roughly just under 3,000 students. You imagine what the phones would look like if all of a sudden we've got, 500 staff members and almost 3,000 students that are all on their phones. So Having those alternate ways to be able to contact those key law enforcement people to get some additional resources is very important.
The other part of that too is there's as part of state law, you have to have the E911 identifiers on your landline phones. So by using a landline and calling 911, it's going to tell you the building, the address, and the room that call came from. So you've got that. Cell phones, I agree with Chad. That was one of the lessons of the 9/11 attacks, that towers quickly became overwhelmed. That's also a reason why we went partnered with the sheriff's office for the 800 megahertz radios in each of the K through 12 school buildings.
It's a layered approach, and all of those, be it cell phones, landlines, or two-way radios, it's a layered approach with multiple facets of how you can communicate. And in an emergency, the two-way radio has, if individuals have them on their hips and they're using them correctly, are the one thing that I have not seen them have been compromised or delayed when trying to communicate in an emergency.
It's redundancy, right? If one
Absolutely.
thing fails, you got a couple other that you can go to.
So just to wrap us up, thank you so much to our panelists. If you would, as a parting thought for our new board members, talk about maybe what one of the most common weaknesses is that you see in school safety, and how our board members might be able to help with those things. How could they bring that up to their superintendent? And what's something that you could see that could maybe solve some of those common weaknesses that you see?
Yeah, I'll jump in. And we talked about it a little bit. I think the biggest thing that we can do, and is in school districts across the state of Michigan, is really get a designated person that's responsible for school safety and security. I'm not saying that districts have the resources or need to build a system out like Scott or Chad or Sean or I have. We've been very fortunate and blessed to be able to have the type of teams that we have. But I think having at least one person in these smaller districts whose focus is school safety and security, who can continue to build relationships with local law enforcement, with your sheriff departments, who can brief your parents and updates, and I think that goes a long way. And I think if you're looking for a cultural change and shift, the fastest way to get that is get someone who's qualified and dedicated to school safety and security, but who also keeps education first, right? And so you want someone who keeps education first, but still have that thinking cap on around how to keep kids safe.
I think that's a great point. I heartily concur with that. The other thing I would say is if you can focus on training staff and make sure that your staff and your administrators are interacting with their counterparts on the first responder side of the house. Get those cops, firefighters, EMTs into your buildings, let them walk around, let them talk to students. But then that way they're familiar with your building, they know who the administrators are, they know how they're lined up, they know how to get down, your hallways and get down and address any emergencies.
And I would add to not forget the other support staff. It's very easy to forget your bus drivers, your food service workers, even your grounds workers. Make sure that everyone from the very top to the very bottom of your organization understands what everything is and understands their role, whether I tell all of our bus drivers, even our custodians, they're educators. We may not be in the classroom, but the roles we serve, whether it's making sure buildings are clean, whether it's bus drivers are the first face and the last face a lot of our students see every day. They're just as much of an educator as the time that they're spent in the classroom. I think it's very important that we don't forget those folks when we're talking about this stuff.
Right. And I guess I would finish with agreeing with everything that those guys have said, and by making sure that you try and take a holistic approach and a layered approach, that security and safety is not just brick and mortar, that security and safety is that relationship piece, that mental health piece, that monitoring piece, that communications piece with families and staff. Because to be quite honest, you know, you're going to get information utilizing, you know, confidential reporting platforms and stuff like that in your districts. Getting the information from outside of your district, usually outside of the school day, a lot of times, that open communication and having people feel comfortable to give you that information. Because we would, like Sean said earlier, you know, what we want to do is disrupt that path early on. We don't want it to continue to build, you know, more and more anger to, you know, we want to disrupt it as quick as we can, intervene, provide supports for that student, and try and take care of a lot of these things on the front end so we don't have to deal with some of the tragedies that are occurring on the back end. None of us want to go through that. We try each and every day to mitigate them as best we can. But by making sure you take that holistic approach and just not really just focus on brick and mortar, I think will really enhance the safety of your buildings.
All right, I think that is a perfect ending note. Thank you so much to Sean, Chad, Larry, and Scott for joining us today. Thank you to all of our board members who were on the webinar today. If anyone has any questions that they come up with after we end, please feel free to shoot us an email and we will do our best to connect you with one of these gentlemen to get your question answered. And again, thank you guys so much. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Yep. Have a great day.